Did you know that there is a person in your life who haunts you for exactly the same reasons you hate yourself? It could be someone who hurt you deeply, someone you lost and never saw again, or even someone you barely know, but who for some mysterious reason has stuck in your mind like gum in your hair. I know exactly how that feels, because when I was 16, I met someone who literally haunted my mind for 3 years straight. Her name was Marina, and look, I'm not exaggerating when I say haunted, because that's exactly what it felt like. She'd appear in my thoughts uninvited. I'd wake up thinking about her. I'd fall asleep thinking about her. Was I watching a movie? There she was in my head. Taking a test? Marina again. And you know what was most disturbing? We'd barely spoken. We'd had maybe 5 conversations in 2 years of school, but something about her had hooked me in a way I couldn't quite understand. Have you ever experienced this? This strange experience of having someone living rent-free in your head, occupying a mental space you didn't even authorize? 2-second pause. For 3 years, I thought I was going crazy. I kept asking myself, why the hell can't I forget this girl? It made no logical sense. I tried to force my mind to think about other things, but it was like trying not to think about a pink elephant. The harder you try, the more it appears. I'd talk to my friends about it and they wouldn't understand. Dude, forget about her. There are plenty of girls out there. Easy to say, right? As if I could just press a button and delete that person from my mental hard drive. But here's the weirdest thing of all. Marina wasn't even the prettiest girl in school. She wasn't even the smartest. She wasn't even the funniest. She was just a completely ordinary girl, you know? So why did she have this power over my mind? The answer came 3 years later, when I was 19 and reading a psychology book. And man, when I read those pages, it was like someone had turned on a light in a dark room. The author was talking about a Swiss psychiatrist named Carl Jung, who had discovered something disturbing about why certain people stick in our minds like emotional parasites. Jung had realized that there is a pattern, a dark, almost mathematical pattern behind these mental obsessions. And when you understand this pattern, you finally understand why that specific person haunts you, while 1,000 others pass through your life without leaving a mark. Because you see, and this might sound a little scary at first, this person you can't forget isn't in your head by accident. They're there for a very specific reason. A reason that has more to do with you than them. Jung discovered that these people function like mirrors, but not ordinary mirrors that reflect your face. They're mirrors that reflect parts of you you don't want to see. Dark parts. Parts you've hidden so well from yourself that you no longer even remember they exist. And that's why you can't forget. It's not because the person is special. It's because they carry something of yours, something that belongs to you, but that you threw away long ago. You know that strange feeling you get when you think about that person? That confusing mix of attraction and repulsion, of love and hate, of fascination and fear? That's no coincidence. It's your own soul trying to show you something important, something you need to see about yourself. But since you don't want to look, your mind projects it onto someone else, and then that person becomes your obsession. Marina wasn't special. What was special was what she represented to me. It was as if she were a movie screen, where my mind projected a film about parts of myself I'd buried alive. And now that you know this, a question arises. Are you ready to discover what this person represents about you? Because when Jung delved deep into this discovery, he found something that completely changed how we understand human relationships. Something that can be liberating, but can also be disturbing to know. Carl Jung was a brilliant man, but he was also a bit disturbed, and that's exactly what made him such a genius at understanding the human mind. He spent his entire life studying why people do completely irrational things when it comes to relationships. And in 1912, he made a discovery that changed everything. Jung realized that every human being carries within them what he called a shadow. But don't worry, I'm not talking about something mystical or esoteric. I'm talking about something very real and very scientific. The shadow is basically everything you are, but don't want to admit it. It's all the aspects of your personality that you've rejected, hidden, or pretended don't exist. It's the you've buried alive. Think about it this way. When you were a child, you were authentic, right? If you were angry, you showed anger. If you were sad, you cried. If you wanted something, you asked for it. You were whole, complete, unfiltered. But then society started shaping you. Your parents said, boys don't cry. School said, sit still and don't ask questions. Your friends said, that's not cool, that's weird. And slowly, you started cutting off pieces of yourself. Every time you hid a trait of your personality to be accepted, you pushed that piece of yourself into the shadows. And here's the problem. Those pieces don't die. They stay there, alive, pulsing, trying to find a way to manifest themselves. Jung discovered something frightening. When you don't accept these parts of yourself, your mind plays a diabolical psychological trick. It projects these characteristics onto others. It's like you have a mental projector that takes everything you've rejected about yourself and throws it onto a screen that is someone else. And then, you become obsessed with this screen. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you were raised to always be proper, always well-behaved, always follow the rules. You buried your rebellious side, your wild side, the part that wants to break everything and tell everyone to go to hell. Then a person appears in your life who is the exact opposite of you. A free, rebellious person who does what they want, who doesn't care what others think. And you become completely fascinated by this person. You think you're attracted to her because she's interesting or different. But the truth is, you're seeing in her the part of yourself you've killed. You're seeing your own rebellious side projected onto her. And that's why you can't forget her. It's not her you want. It's the part of you she represents. Jung called this shadow projection. And boy, when you understand that, you start seeing this pattern everywhere. That person who irritates you deeply. They probably have traits you share but you hate about yourself. That's why the irritation is so intense. That person you fell madly in love with at first sight. They probably have qualities you long for but have cut off from yourself. That person you admire so much, who you put on a pedestal? Same thing. You're seeing aspects of yourself in them that you can't accept you have. It's like a mathematical equation. The intensity of your emotional reaction to a person is directly proportional to how much they represent rejected parts of yourself. Jung tested this theory for decades. He analyzed thousands of patients, and the pattern always repeated itself. The people who affect us most, positively or negatively, are always mirrors of our own internal contradictions. He discovered that there are three main types of projection we make. First, we project our rejected flaws. Do you hate arrogant people? You probably have arrogance within you, but you refuse to admit it. Second, we project our denied qualities. Do you fall in love with creative people? Maybe you're creative, but you were taught that art doesn't make money, and buried that side. Third, we project our undeveloped potential. Do you admire courageous people? You may have courage within you, but you've never had the opportunity to develop it. And here's the most disturbing part of Jung's discovery. These projections are so powerful that they literally alter how you see reality. You're not seeing the real person. You're seeing a distorted version of them, filtered through your own inner issues. It's like you're wearing glasses with special lenses that make some people look giant and others look invisible. And you don't even realize you're wearing them. Jung realized that most human relationships are based on this. People falling in love with projections, people hating projections, people obsessed with projections. We rarely see people as they truly are. We see them as mirrors of our own inner conflicts. And the Marina in my story? Once I understood Jung, it became crystal clear. She represented an emotional freedom I had cut off from myself, a spontaneity I had buried to be the good boy my family expected. I wasn't obsessed with her. I was obsessed with the part of me she reflected. But here's the thing that will give you chills. If this is true, it means you never really knew this person who haunts you. You only knew a distorted version of them, created by your own mind. The real you may be completely different from what you imagine. And this raises a scary question. Who are you really when you stop projecting pieces of yourself onto others? After years of studying these projections, Jung identified a specific pattern. He realized that there are precisely 3 types of people who cling to our minds like emotional parasites, and each type represents a different way you encounter rejected parts of yourself. I'll explain the 3 types to you, and I guarantee you'll recognize at least one, maybe all 3, in your own life. Type 1. The dark mirror. This is the most common and also the most disturbing type. It's that person you hate viscerally, but can't stop thinking about. It could be an ex who cheated on you, an abusive boss, or that coworker who irritates you just by breathing. The dark mirror's defining characteristic is that it awakens disproportionate anger within you. It's not just normal irritation. It's a burning, consuming, sleepless rage. Jung discovered something shocking about this type. The intensity of your hatred is exactly proportional to how much you resemble that person in ways you refuse to admit. Let me give you a real-life example. I had a friend in college named Ricardo who really irritated me. He was arrogant, self-centered, and always thought he was better than everyone else. I felt physically repulsed when he spoke. Until one day, watching a video of mine on YouTube, I was shocked. Man, I was being exactly like Ricardo. Speaking superiorly, thinking I was better than my audience, being arrogant without realizing it. I had projected onto Ricardo exactly the flaws I had, but refused to see in myself. That's why the irritation was so intense. The dark mirror is cruel because it forces you to see your own flaws reflected in someone else. And because you don't want to accept those flaws, you develop a negative obsession with that person. You keep thinking about her constantly. Not because you like her, but because your mind is trying to show you something about yourself that you refuse to see. Type 2. The lost treasure. This second type is even more treacherous. It's that person you fall madly in love with, but who seems unattainable. It's not just physical attraction, it's an almost spiritual fascination. You feel as if this person is special, different, perfect. Jung realized that the lost treasure carries qualities you've cut off from yourself throughout your life, qualities you once had, but which were suppressed by family, society, or circumstances. I'll tell you about Carolina. I met her when I was 21, and man, it was like being struck by lightning. She was an artist, painted incredible paintings, and lived a completely free and creative life. I was absolutely obsessed. I spent 2 years thinking I was in love with her. I daydreamed about our life together. I idealized every conversation, every look. She became a goddess in my mind. Until Jung made me realize the painful truth. I wasn't in love with Carolina. I was in love with my own creativity, which I had buried alive. Ever since I was little, I loved drawing, creating stories, and inventing things, but my family always said, "Stop it. Art doesn't give you a future. Focus on your studies." And I obeyed. I killed my creative side to be responsible. Carolina represented everything I could have been if I hadn't cut that part of myself off. I didn't want her. I wanted to be her. The lost treasure is dangerous because it creates an impossible idealization. You place the person on such a high pedestal that they become a fantasy. And while you're obsessed with this fantasy, you completely ignore who the person really is. Type 3. The haunted potential. This is the most subtle and perhaps the most powerful type. It's the person who awakens in you a confusing mix of admiration, envy, and sadness. It's neither romantic love nor pure hatred. It's something more complex. Haunted potential represents who you could have become if you had made different choices in life. These are people who followed paths you would have liked to have followed, but didn't have the courage or the opportunity. It could be that friend from school who became a famous musician while you chose safety. It could be that person who had the courage to travel the world while you stayed in your comfort zone. It could be someone who built the relationship of your dreams while you accumulated failed ones. Jung found that this kind of projection is especially painful because it confronts you not with who you are, but with who you haven't become. It's like looking at an alternate version of yourself in a parallel dimension. I have an acquaintance named Mateus who gives me exactly this feeling. He left everything behind at 30, moved to Europe, learned 3 languages, and became a professional photographer. Every time I see his posts on Instagram, I feel a strange pang. It's not pure envy. It's as if I'm seeing a version of myself who had the courage to take risks, while I chose the safe path. Matthew represents my undeveloped potential as an adventurer. Haunted potential is cruel because it shows you possibilities you missed. And since you can't go back in time, this person becomes a constant reminder of your unmade choices. The disturbing revelation, here's the part that will give you chills. Jung realized that these 3 people, the dark mirror, the lost treasure, and the haunted potential, are all the same thing. They are fragments of yourself that you've lost along the way. The dark mirror shows you who you are, but denies being. The lost treasure shows who you were, but are no longer. Haunted potential shows you who you could have been, but didn't become. And all of these types stick in your mind because your soul is trying to show you something. It's trying to make you whole again. It's trying to reclaim the pieces of you that you threw away. But here's the problem. As long as you project these pieces onto other people, you'll never get them back. You'll be forever obsessed with people who are actually just mirrors of your own inner wounds. The question Jung asked his patients was always the same. Are you ready to stop looking for yourself in others and start finding yourself within yourself? Because there is a way to free yourself from these obsessions, but it requires courage to do something most people would rather avoid forever. The first thing Jung said to his patients when they discovered these projections was something that sounded almost cruel. Congratulations, you have just discovered that you spent years of your life obsessed with ghosts of your own creation. But then came the hardest part. Because it's one thing to intellectually understand that you're projecting parts of yourself onto other people. It's quite another to have the courage to reintegrate those lost pieces back into yourself. Jung called this process removing the projections. And boy, he wasn't lying when he said it would be some of the hardest work you could ever do. Because just think, you've spent years, maybe decades, building an identity based on denying certain parts of yourself. You've become the nice guy by denying your aggression. You've become the responsible person by denying your spontaneity. You've become the strong one by denying your vulnerability. And now Jung is telling you that you need to embrace the very parts you've rejected. It's as if he's asking you to meet your own inner demons and invite them to dinner. The process of liberation. The first step is the most painful. You need to accept that the person haunting you isn't really the problem. The problem is what they represent about you. Remember Marina? The one I mentioned at the beginning. When I finally understood that my obsession with her was actually an obsession with my own repressed emotional freedom, I had to make a choice. I could continue fantasizing about her, creating fictional scenarios in my head, feeding a passion for projection, or I could have the courage to ask myself, what does Marina represent that I need to develop within myself? The answer was clear: spontaneity, emotional authenticity, the courage to be vulnerable, qualities I had cut out of myself to be the good boy my family approved of. But here's the part no one tells you. Developing these qualities in yourself is infinitely more difficult than fantasizing about them in someone else. It's much easier to admire someone else's courage than to have courage yourself. It's much more comfortable to criticize others' arrogance than to admit your own. It's much safer to idealize someone else's creativity than to risk creating something and possibly failing. The resistance of the mind. Jung realized that our minds have a diabolical resistance to this process. They'd much rather keep you obsessed with someone else than force you to grow and develop, because growing up hurts. Integrating rejected parts of yourself means admitting that you're not who you thought you were. It means accepting that you're more complex, more contradictory, more human than your self-image allows. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Let's say you identify that your constant irritation with fake people is actually a projection of your own tendency to be inauthentic in certain situations. The next step would be to start observing your own moments of insincerity. Notice when you agree with someone just to avoid conflict, when you exaggerate a story to impress, when you hide your true opinions to be accepted. And man, that's humiliating. It's much more comfortable to keep hating the fake people out there than to acknowledge your own inauthenticity. The price of liberation. Jung discovered something disturbing. Most people would rather live obsessed with their projections than do the work of integration, because the price of liberation is too high. The price is letting go of your fixed identity. It's accepting that you're not just the nice guy. You're also aggressive. You're not just the strong one. You're also vulnerable. You're not just the responsible one. You're also possessing wild impulses. And this terrifies most people. Because it means you can no longer hide behind a simple social mask. It means you need to embrace your complexity, your contradictions, your dark sides. The practical method. For those brave enough to try, Jung developed a specific method. First, identify exactly what quality in the person fascinates or irritates you most. Be brutally specific. It's not she's special. It's she has the courage to express controversial opinions. It's not he irritates me. It's he's manipulative and always gets what he wants. Second, look for that same quality in yourself. And here's the trick. It's always there. Always. If you can recognize a quality in someone else, it's because you have the software for that quality within you. Third, start consciously developing this quality in your life. If you admire courage, start practicing small acts of courage. If you hate manipulation, observe your own manipulative behaviors and work on them. The uncomfortable truth. But let me be honest with you, most people won't do this, because it's much easier to live in a romantic fantasy about someone than to develop emotional maturity. It's much simpler to hate someone than to work on your own flaws. Jung estimated that only 10% of people have the courage to withdraw their projections and truly integrate. The other 90% prefer to live in an eternal dance with emotional ghosts. And you know what? It's okay. Not everyone is ready for this level of self-awareness. Because when you truly integrate, when you stop projecting, something strange happens. People stop fascinating you in the same way. You stop falling for fantasies and start seeing people as they really are. Complex, imperfect, real human beings. And it can be lonely, because most people are still living in a world of projections, falling in love with fantasies, hating mirrors of themselves. The unexpected ending. Here's something Jung discovered that may shock you. Even when you free yourself from these obsessions, they can return. Because integration isn't a permanent state. It's an ongoing process. New life challenges can awaken new perspectives. You may meet new people who touch unintegrated parts of yourself. The work is never completely finished. But there's something Jung discovered about people going through this process that can completely change how you view your future relationships. Something that can be liberating but also dangerous to know, because it involves a secret about attraction and human connection that most people would rather never know. A secret that can make you question everything you thought you knew about love, friendship, and relationships. I'll tell you about that in the next video.